Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Shifting Lanes. My name is Hanson. Thank you so much for tuning in. And for this video, I'm sitting in the 2021 Toyota Camry TRD. And I want to share with you my personal likes and dislikes about this car so that you have a better idea before you buy. Now, my favorite thing about the Toyota Camry TRD is the look. The Camry TRD is basically what happens when you give a Camry to someone with a Sport Compact Car magazine subscription, if they still existed. Or if you gave one to someone who's a huge fan of the Fast and Furious series. They'll tack on an aero kit, put on aggressive looking wheels, a ridiculous rear wing, and an exhaust. The Camry TRD is basically what you would get if you gave me a stock Camry. Come back in a couple of weekends and this is what it's gonna look like. This is basically what I did with the cars that I've owned. For my BRZ, I put on an aero kit, wheels and suspension upgrades. For my Volvo S60R, I put on an aero kit and upgraded wheels. And my latest car is a 2020 Hyundai Veloster N, which I've also added a carbon fiber lip kit and upgraded the wheels. And if you want to see that series, please click the link up here. Point being, if you think the Camry TRD looks dumb, and I think that's a very fair point of view, there's still a decently sized market who would want to do these upgrades anyway. And in the case of the Camry TRD, they've done it for you and it's warranted. And this isn't the first time that Toyota has sold something that looks on the crazy side. Back in the early 2000s, they sold a Toyota Celica with an available action package.
Slow down! This is a neighborhood! Punk.
And aside from the Camry, they've also done this to the Corolla. The Corolla has the Apex trim, and they've tacked on aero pieces, suspension upgrades, and a badass looking wheel. And if you want to see that review, please click the link up here. But back to the Camry TRD, yes, this might look a bit on the ridiculous side, but if you ignore the Camry name and ignore all the stereotypes that comes with the Camry nameplate, this is actually a good looking car. The car is slightly lowered, which gives it better handling, and I'll talk more about that later. But more significantly, it makes the car look sportier. The wheel gap looks more like something you'd find with tuner cars. And the stance is slightly wider and more flush compared to the more vanilla Camrys. And that's because of these TRD specific wheels, which are a ½ inch wider. The matte black wheels look like something you can buy from Tire Rack. This TRD wheel is a unique take on the traditional mesh design wheel. They're also 3 pounds lighter than the normal 19-inch offering that you'd find in the XSE trim. More on that a bit later as well. Perhaps the biggest downside to this wheel, though, is that it will be very difficult to clean because there's 14 individual spokes. You should just be glad that they're finished in matte black because it will hide the brake dust pretty well. I also like this black and white panda color scheme. In this case, this is the Ice Edge color with black metallic roof. This is one of 3 color schemes that you can get for the 2021 model. Sadly, they've gone away with their supersonic red color for 2021 for the TRD. Overall, the two-tone look makes the aero kit pop even more. I like the subtle red lining on the front lip, the side skirts, and the rear lip. This design again reminds me of my Veloster N with its red accents. If you're looking for a more subtle color scheme, then you should go with the midnight black metallic color option. The black on black with a hint of red, that's a killer color combo. This Ice Edge color would be my color choice though, because depending on the lighting, it looks white, or it could be silver, or it could also be matte gray. Plus, that red TRD logo contrasts really well with this color. As for the rest of the visual touches, you'll find the TRD engraving on the special exhaust, blacked out badges, and on the inside you'll find special red stitching everywhere, on the steering wheel, on the seats, on the dash. Of course, you can't forget about the red seat belts, which is pretty cool looking because it adds lots of power. So in my opinion, the Camry looks really good inside and out, but here's the thing, you have to really fall in love with the look of the car to live with some of the limitations that you'll get with the Camry TRD trim. For example, it's currently 18 degrees outside during this filming, and in a normal Camry, you'd normally find the heated seat buttons right over here, but that's not the case for the Camry TRD. And the same goes for the heated steering wheel. That's not an option. You might also think, hey, all those cars with the 360-degree cameras and the bird's eye fly-around views of my car. Like, yeah, that's really cool, but can't get that in the TRD. The same goes for some of the typical nice touches that you'd normally find in cars in this price range, like a panoramic moonroof or auto-dimming mirrors or even navigation. Those features you cannot find in the TRD trim. And speaking of navigation, the center console still has a button that says map on there. Now that might just be one of the more disappointing buttons in the history of buttons, because when you press that, it just tells you that, hey, you got one of the cheaper Camrys and that navigation is not available. And regarding price, the Camry TRD is the cheapest way of getting into a Camry with a V6. It has a starting price of $32,185. And if you want to go with the next level V6 trim, and that's the XLE V6, that has a starting MSRP of $35,000. Power-wise, the 3.5 liter V6 makes for pretty good power at 301 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque. That's a lot more power than the base 2.5 liter four-cylinder engine, which makes 230 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque. And that engine is mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission, which makes for a pretty decent driving experience. I like these newer, higher speed automatic transmissions because they shift faster and they also have better efficiency. There are paddle shifters behind the steering wheel. Keep in mind though that the shifting with the paddle shifters is slightly different than shifting gears with the gear lever. This one will put you in the right gear that you want, whereas the paddle shifters will put you in a band of gears. So if you're shifting gears yourself and for some reason you're taking this to the track or something like that, then I would just manually shift using the shifter rather than the paddle shifters. Overall, the sedan is decently quick and it can go 0 to 60 in less than 6 seconds. The other best part of the Camry TRD, aside from the looks of course, is all of the handling upgrades that's been made in this car. Now, I've mentioned earlier that the wheels are 3 pounds lighter. That might not sound like a lot, but that's unsprung weight and also its rotational mass. So because it's lighter, that means that the car's drivetrain has to work less hard compared to a traditional Camry. That just means that the Camry TRD is more agile. The car is also 0.6 inches lower because of the sport-tuned coil springs. Now, lower center of gravity is always better for handling. That's why sedans are always more fun to drive compared to SUVs. It's because the center of gravity of a sedan is lower to the ground. When you drive on these twisty back roads, a car with a lower center of gravity is always going to feel more planted and responsive. The TRD trim also gives you thicker sway bars or stabilizer bars. Now these are linkages that connect the left and right sides of the suspension elements. Now the thicker the sway bars, the stiffer it is, and the stiffer the linkages, the more rigid the car will feel, the better it will handle. You'll also find that the rear seats don't fold flat, and that's because there's a V-brace structure behind these seats to improve the overall stiffness of the cabin. That's why when you're driving in a more spirited fashion, you'll find that the Camry TRD is going to feel more flat and more responsive than a traditional Camry. And you'll probably also notice that the ride is a tad worse considering how much stiffer the Camry TRD is. So you should really test drive this on a back road somewhere and safely ring it out. I think you'll find that it'll feel much more engaging and fun to drive compared to your standard Camry. And the ride isn't really too jarring to the point where it's uncomfortable. Some cars are really stiff, and I have to reference back to my Hyundai Veloster N, because if you jumped in that car and you put yourself into N mode, the suspension is ultra stiff, and if you drove longer than 10 minutes on New Jersey roads, your spine is going to turn into dust. So overall, do I recommend the Camry TRD? If you're like me and you like to do visual upgrades to your car, then absolutely you should get the Camry TRD, because Toyota has basically done that for you and it's all warranted. No need to fuss with installation or subpar aftermarket components. The Camry TRD is almost car show ready from the factory, so I highly recommend it. In fact, if I were in the market for a Camry, this would be the one I go with. However, if you need those convenience features like the heated seats, the auto-dimming mirrors, the navigation, or the 360-degree camera, you won't find those features even as an option for the Camry TRD. You're better off going with the XLE or XSE V6 Camry. But generally, the Camry model is a good choice no matter what trim you end up going with. The interior quality and look and feel is quite decent. There's plenty of rear legroom and cargo capacity as well. And perhaps most importantly, the Camry continues to be one of the more reliable cars ever made, and the resale values are quite good too. Well, there you have it. That's my review of the 2021 Toyota Camry TRD. If you learned something from this video or found it entertaining, please consider hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe, and also hitting that notification bell so that you can be notified anytime we make a new video. I'll wrap it up right there. My name is Hanson. This has been the 2021 Toyota Camry TRD, and I'll see you next time.